Okay, there's a term I use, and it's called, now what is stable datum? Sounds kind of like garbage in this, but stable datum is really when you have a problem, you see something happens, you grab hold of something to stabilize yourself. It's the same thing in when you're listening to people. Stable datum is really having some sort of common experience. Well, one time, years and years ago, when I flew back to Boston, I was from California at the time. I put on my Sony Walkman and I was listening to Buckminster Fuller tapes. And on my way to Burlington, Vermont, to do a presentation for a couple hundred people. And so there's two ways out of Boston. You can take 93 or 95. One of them takes you to Maine. One of them takes you to Vermont. And of course, I think 93 goes to Maine, but I'm not sure which way it is. But anyway, I am listening to Buckminster Fuller. This is back when the old Sony Walkmans, you put a headset on, and I'm enjoying it. I'm making a few notes, and and I look up, and I'm on 90, whatever it is, and it says, "Welcome to Maine." And I'm going, oh man, I'm on the wrong highway. And that's how spaced out I was. So immediately I look, because now I've got my attention, because I got 200 people waiting for me. There's a talk, and I have to get there. So I'm going really, really fast. I cross over and get into New Hampshire, and I'm going through a back road. I'm going through a very back gravel road, and as I go around, going way too fast, I go around a corner and sort of in the middle of the dirt road and sort of sliding around. Right in front of me is a state trooper. And I almost hit him. I was so close that when he got that, I mean, I just missed him. You could tell because he could feel the wind in between the two cars. And I'm going, oh, man. And, of course, immediately before he even turned around, he already had his lights on, and he came around. And, and I know I'm dead. So there's a whole concept here is that when you're caught, you're caught. And so if you watch a dog, when a dog surrenders in a fight, they roll over on their back. So the concept here is to roll over. And so what I knew I had to do was, because I was dead. Dead. I almost killed a guy. And so when the cop came out, he was a big guy like you would expect a highway patrolman to be. I'd already pulled over, and I got out of the car. And you're not supposed to get out of a car because they want you to get back in the car. But before I could do that, I went over to him. I got right in front of him. Now, he said, get back in the car. And before I went back in the car, I just put my hands out in the Christian pose. They don't like the Christian pose. The Christian pose reminds them of Jesus and the cross, and people do almost anything to get you out of the Christian pose. So you don't want to, you use this because you know what's going to make that person uncomfortable, and you're vulnerable, like rolling over with a dog. So then I said to the guy, I looked at him, I said, have you ever been lost and late? And I could see in his eyes danced a little, and I could see he'd been lost and he'd been late. He had some stable datum on being lost and late. So he got me back in the car. I pull out my California driver's license. Here I am in New Hampshire. And he says, California, he says, son, you really are lost. And I just looked at him, and I knew the guy was going to give me a ticket because he smiled and I smiled. I said, listen, I was supposed to take the 200 people up in Burlington, Vermont. I ended up in Maine. I should have been going up on whatever the 90, whichever one it was. And he said, and I said, I'm going to be late. And I was trying to make it through here as fast as I could. And he says, hold on. He said, follow me. And he put his lights on and turned around and took me across New Hampshire to the Vermont border. And I'm going, I went from getting a ticket to having an escort as fast as I could go across New Hampshire. And I said, man, this is really, really important. And so I realized that when you go to get somebody to understand what you're doing, you've got to bring stable datum into this equation. If they understand that and have some sort of emotional attachment to it, you've really gone a long way for people understanding the situation. Lost and late, he had stable datum. I had a guy in front of the room once when I was teaching a course on powerful presentations. He talked about a movie that no one in the audience, nor me, had ever seen. He talks about different scenes and everything else. And of course, at the end, he asked, are there any questions? Of course there are no questions. No one understood the movie. No one had seen the movie. No stable datum. If they don't have stable datum, there's no reason to go further. So the key is to look for stable datum in any situation so that they'll have the common experience, they'll understand, and ideally, if it has emotional attachment to it, it's going to be extremely effective. And I learned that lesson as I'm driving behind a highway patrolman across New Hampshire to get to Vermont, and I made it to the program in Burlington like 3 minutes before I was supposed to speak. So had he not done, I would never have made it. I learned from Bucky a long time ago that the bigger the picture, the more accurate your prediction. There's nothing in a caterpillar, if you just study a caterpillar, will ever tell you about scenario butterfly. So my entire life, I'm working as much as I can to be a comprehensivist. That's interested in everything, so I can make better choices, better decisions, and have a better perspective. What can I do for you?